Hello friends, welcome back to Aunt Debbie's Boutique. Today we're going to be making a Jacob's Ladder quilt. But before we get started, I just wanted to apologize for my absence lately. I haven't put out a video for at least 2 weeks, maybe even a little longer. But my life just had a mind of its own and it just wasn't possible. I'll spare you all the details, but it included out-of-town company, an out-of-town business trip, water heater going out and flooding my downstairs, food poisoning, and an unexpected out-of-town funeral. So couple all that with the fact that this particular quilt block is a little more time consuming than some of the ones I've done. It's just taken me longer to get to this point. Now I have already made all but 3 of the quilt blocks. I wanted to do that to save time in making this video and not drag you through all of them. But I'm going to make 3 in the video, 3 at a time, so you can see how I chain them. And the other 32, I chain just like I did these 3. Now, one of the things I did before I started this project was figure out how to maximize a fat quarter, because I had a set of fat quarters, if you probably saw in the introduction picture, that were all blues and whites, and I wanted to use those fat quarters, but I didn't want to waste a lot of fabric. Sometimes if the pattern calls for yardage and stuff, it's kind of hard to figure all that out. I didn't use any particular pattern. I just used a printout of how one goes together, and I will link it in the description box. I've also got, let me see where I put it. Well, I've got a diagram of how to cut it out with a fat quarter, and oh, here it is, And I have scanned this and put it in Dropbox, and I will put a link to it above so that you know how to cut yours out, but I'm going to show you too. Okay, for one fat quarter, you can cut out all the dark pieces, and the light pieces are exactly the same. So you could have one dark fat quarter, one light or contrasting fat quarter, and you will get 3 blocks out of this, and there is practically 0 waste. If you'll look at this, it's 17.5 inches on this one side. Well, a fat quarter is usually 18 inches, so there's only a 1/2 inch waste there. This is 20 inches across, and a fat quarter is usually 21 to 22. So, and we use almost every bit. I think there's 1 or 2 little 2.5 inch blocks we don't use. So let me lay this out the way I cut it out. And when I first figured it out and cut all mine out, I had miscalculated the number of 2.5 inch squares I needed. And so I made some cuts I didn't need, but I'll show you that. I'll leave a little gap here between them. The next thing I did, these are 2.5 inch strips. Then I cut out 4 5-inch blocks. Okay, this may not all fit in the screen, but I'll do my best. Just leave a tiny gap there. well, I guess actually, the way I better do it like my diagram. I put the four 5-inch squares on the bottom and 2 of them right here. Then I used the rest of this 5-inch strip and cut it down for 2.5-inch strips. Here is the piece I shouldn't have cut, but I was able to work around it, just pretend that wasn't cut, because I didn't think I needed as many as I did. Okay, so that's how I cut out my fat quarter. And like I said, there's only about a 1/2 inch going this way, and depending on what fabric you have, 1 inch to maybe 2 inches on the on one of these sides. And that will make you 3 blocks. I cut my light out of yardage. So what was it I figured? I used 12 fat quarters, so I'll need the equivalent of 12 fat quarters, which would be 4 yards. Yeah. So 4 yards if you want to cut it out of yardage. But I thought it'd be interesting to make this block too, where you used a different light fabric for every block, just like a white on white or a taupe or tan color, you know, linen looking color. I thought that would be real pretty too. All right, now then we need to sew these. So I have all these cut out of the dark fabric, and I had, let's see, 12 different fat quarters, 12 fat quarters, but they were 6 different. I had 2 fat quarter bundles of 6 that I used. So I have 6 blocks of each fabric. And so I have different blue fabrics, like was in the introduction picture. Now then, I needed to take my white blocks, because I have white cut out exactly the same, and draw a line corner to corner. On the back side, this line I drew with an erasable pen. You can use whatever you want because it's not going to show. And we are going to make half square triangles. And if you're new to quilting, half square triangles, we take this center line and we sew down each side of it 1/4 inch from it. Now, I recommend doing a scant 1/4 inch, which means slightly under 1/4 inch, because we're going to trim these blocks up when we're done. But I have trouble I'm always getting smaller blocks than I want, ever so slightly. And so for me, I like to sew with a scant 1/4 inch. And that just makes it, I'd rather have too much and trim it off than not have enough. So that's what we're going to do on those. Then we're going to make strip units with right sides together. With our 2.5 inch strips, we're going to sew down one side to make sure I've got the right side down. This white on white's hard to tell which side's the right side. Okay, let's see. And then on these, I'm going to just chain all 3 of them on this one white piece. So let's take this over to the sewing machine and chain all these pieces and get the sub blocks sewn together. Okay, I don't think I had my camera on when I first started, and then I made a mistake and had to stop. So let me just explain that I have chained with a 1/4 inch seam all of these 3 long ones, and then I started on the short pieces and I had my white piece upside down, so I had to stop and rip that out. Better to catch it now than later. So I am continuing to chain everything back to back. It's not quite long enough. So I am just going to chain it to a different piece and trim that piece later. Now I'm going to flip these squares around and sew down the other side. Okay, I'm having a very bad day. I'm just tired and I'm making mistakes right and left. I hope you will forgive me, but either I didn't turn the camera on or it shut down on its own while I ironed those strips, those long strips that we sewed, and then we cut them into 2.5 inch blocks, and we ironed our we cut our half square triangles apart and ironed them. And I apologize that you didn't get to see that step if it was something you really needed to see. I don't know. I don't know what happened, but I looked up in the middle of talking and I could see my camera wasn't on. But now we're going to take this back to the sewing machine. We're going to take 2 of these blocks and flip them so that they are opposite corners with right sides together. We're going to nest our seams. One is going this way, one is going that way, and the seam itself is right on top of the seam of this one. And you can feel it with your finger. I like to get them a little further apart and then just slide them till it kind of locks in place. And then I try to make these ends meet, but sometimes it just takes a little tugging, they will, but this one looks a little bit off, but it'll be okay. But I'm going to sew these together. We have 30 of these, I believe. Yes. And we're going to end up with 5 blocks for each. So it'd be a total of 15 blocks. Yes, 5 blocks for each of the 3 we're making. So I'm going to take these over to the sewing machine, and if I don't screw up again, you can watch me sew these. I'm just so sorry. I guess I'm just too tired. I've had such a crazy week. So let's go sew these together. I'm gonna cut them apart, and I'm gonna have to trim some of these. One of the blue pieces was wider than it should have been. I think I didn't trim off that extra 1/2 inch, and I meant to trim it before I started cutting blocks apart, and I forgot. So I'm going to cut these apart. I'll go trim them off camera, because that's not a step you would take if you'd cut it out right to begin with. And then I'll come back and we'll iron them and start assembling our main block. All right, I trimmed them up as best as I could. Some of them just, oh, I'm sorry, I hit the camera. Some of them just weren't cut out as well as they should be. Okay, this time when we iron these open, my iron's cooled down a little bit. It doesn't matter which way you iron them because they're both the same. Just iron it to one side. There's not going to be any seams that intersect it that we have to line up. And when we get to the final putting the block together, it's a guessing game as to which way to iron them, because they're just like in the log cabin quilt. There are different ways you can lay out the blocks and get a totally different look. And so it depends on how you lay out your blocks, and I haven't decided that yet, as to which way to iron those final seams. So chances are we're going to be re-ironing a few seams as we go, but that's okay. Our next step is going to be trimming those half square triangles, because we want to trim them to exactly 4.5 inch squares, which we're hoping that's what these are. They're close. I trimmed off any excess, and the places that they're short are not short by very much, so they'll work just fine. Okay, our 4-patch sub blocks are done, and as soon as we trim our half square triangles, they'll be done. Be time to put the block together. So you can see the only two sub blocks you have to make in this entire quilt are half square triangles and 4-patch, and those are both very simple. So even though it was time consuming for me, it was because there's so many pieces. It's not because it was difficult. Now I'm going to bring my little rotating board without the rotator. I thank the viewer who told me about the, I believe it's Martinelli, is that the way you say it? Rotating board that has ball bearings in it, so it won't break like these others. So I am going to order one. I looked at it, I just haven't had a chance to order it yet, but I'm anxious to get one that really rotates like it's supposed to. Okay, I'm taking a 4.5 inch square ruler. Let me find a different one. I want to show you that you can also use a different ruler, because they have like 45 degree lines that you can line up, just as long as you keep track of your other sides. But we want to line corner and corner up on this line. Now I've seen a nifty tool, and I'm going to get me one on some of the other YouTube channels. I think it's called a block lock, and it has some sort of ridge on the bottom that catches on your seam and will hold it right in place, and that just looks really cool to me. So I'm going to try one of those, but we're going to trim both sides, and see there's not very much we're trimming off, and that's with a scant 1/4 inch seam. So that's why I recommend doing that. And then I'm just going to turn my board around manually here so I don't have to move everything. And now we have a nice, neat square. Okay, we've got 12 of these to trim. So I'll turn it on fast motion, warp speed, and we'll get these done. Okay, don't you wish that we could do it that fast in real life? So here is all of our half square triangles, all trimmed and ready to go, trimmed, ironed. Get all this fuzz out of here. And here are our 4 patches. Now, to lay out our block, doesn't matter if this block is facing me or you, it's laid out exactly the same. We take our dark square and put it in the upper corner, and we're going to make a trail of dark squares in a diagonal here. And if you'll notice, each block is laying exactly the same direction. We take 2 more blocks and put it in the other corners, and we want them laying the same direction. See, this is in the upper corner, this is in the lower, what is that, lower right, this is upper left. I hope I said that right for your direction. Same here. See how all these blocks are facing the same way, so you don't have to worry about which way to turn them. They're all turned exactly the same way. You could just, what I like to do is stack them all in the pile the same direction, and then when I start laying them out, I don't have to turn anything. Now then, we need 4 of our half square triangles, and we're going to take 2 at a time, and we're going to have the dark, like 2 arrows pointing to each other, and we're going to lay those right there. The other 2, like 2 arrows pointing to each other, we're going to lay it like that. Now, can you see what our block is going to look like? Here's one that I've already sewn together. We have a dark diagonal line going this way, and we have the white diagonal line going this way. So now the only thing left to do is to sew this 9 patch together. And when I get to this point, I do them one at a time. I don't, I'm not sewing together all 32 blocks. I chain everything to this point, but at this point, I don't want to get confused and have something point in the wrong direction or the wrong color, whatever. So I'm going to take this over to the machine. I'm going to sew this, 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 because this is on my left hand side. It would probably be opposite if it was facing you. And I'll chain these together, then I'll go back to the top and open them up and add each one of these blocks. And then we'll have our rows sewed together. So let's get that done. Okay, we've got these rows sewed together. Now we need to iron them. And when I have a choice, I like to iron away from half square triangles. And that's because they get all bunched up in the corners and they don't like to lay down smooth. So on this middle row, I'm going to iron towards the center. On this row, I'm going to iron towards the outside, this row and this row. Therefore, I'm not bunching up my quarters of my half square triangles, and then they'll be opposite and we'll be able to nest our seams. So let's iron that real quick. Now I'm going to turn it to the front side and make sure my seams, it's hard to get it without messing up other seams, hard to get it perfect on the back side. Plus you sometimes need to kind of pull the seams open a little better. So now I'm going to steam it real good on the front side. And I always give it a little tug. I don't want to give it too much of a tug that I mess anything up, but so that we get these seams completely open. Now it's time to sew our last two seams. And we're going to fold it over right sides together. And on both of these seams, we're going to have an instance where we have a half square triangle coming together on both sides. Now this other seam is real easy because all we have to do is make sure it nests there. But this one, not only do we have to make sure it nests together. Let me grab one of these and I hope I grab one that looks good. This would look good if it was ironed better. We have got to have all of this come together at one point. And most of mine worked out pretty good. But the secret to that is going to be not only nesting our seams, but lining up the 1/4 inch seam on each side. And I think it's going to be easier to show you this on the other camera because I can get in closer. So let's take this over to the sewing machine and I'll show you how I do that before I stitch it. Okay, can you see right here where all these seams come together? There's a point right there. First of all, before I do that, I like to clip this little chain stitch there while I'm doing this part. It's fine on the other one, but this makes it easier to line it up. So right here where they all come together, there's a little point. Let me stick a pin in that. That's where we're going to want our seam to go across. And it's a little further down. Do you see where our point crosses there, where they come together? It's a little further down on this side. It's because I'm not all that perfect at sewing my seams. So we want these nested together, and we want the point that the seams cross on both of them to come together. Okay, I'm going to pull that out because sometimes I mess it up by trying to pin it there, and just pin that right there in place. Then I'm going to come down here to the other end and line it up best I can. I'm gonna sew my 1/4 inch seam, but when I get to this point right here, okay, I'm gonna stop a little bit ahead of time. Should have stopped a little bit before then. But I'm going to kind of peek in here and make sure. I think it is. I didn't stop soon enough to be able to see very good, but I'm going to stitch right across that where those seams connect. Now this one is going to be perfectly fine just nesting the seams because there's no other intersections coming together there. Okay, let's open this up and see how good we did. That's pretty good. They come together fairly good. This could have lined up ever so slightly better, but I'm good with that. So, you know, unthread my machine there. Let's try it again on the other side. See how close we can get it. Okay, so I'm going to come over here where our 2 half square triangles meet, clip that little thread so it doesn't constrain me. And you see the point right there? We have the same point here, but we can see it better from this side where the seams cross. It's exactly where everything needs to cross. So this time I'm going to stop it a little sooner so I can make adjustments if need be. I've got a situation here where my 4 patches weren't cut perfectly well. One's a little smaller than the other. Okay, I'm going to stop right here now. I'm going to open it up and make sure the little white point here is going to line up perfectly with the blue point over there. And then I'm going to stitch right across that intersection. Okay, that one should have lined up a little bit better. We hope. Okay, let's check this one. Oh yeah, that's even better. All the points come right together there. So you have a smooth line here. Your eye doesn't go to a little jump. And these points line up too. All right, we did a good job on that one. Let's go back to the ironing board. All right, here's our finished block. Let's iron our 2 last seams. Now, this is the point where it doesn't really matter which way you iron it, you'll probably be wrong. So I've ironed some of mine in and some of mine towards out, just hoping that I'll get lucky and they'll line up, which probably won't happen, but we may have to change them when we're sewing our blocks together, but we'll be able to get a nice, clean looking block. And here is our final block. Let me get out some others. Now I still have 2 more over here to make from that fat quarter, but here's all the pretty different blues that I used. And I don't think I said, but I needed 35 blocks. So using 12 fat quarters would be 36 blocks. So I will have an extra one. I've got one that I've got a square that's not turned the right direction. And so make sure that one is, yeah. I'll probably won't use it. I just made them all up, and I knew I'd make a mistake on one of them that I didn't want to use. So I'm going to sew these last 2 blocks up, and then we're going to meet at my dining room table again and try to lay this quilt out. It's going to be a twin size, so it's not completely going to fit on the table, but I'll show you different ways we can turn the blocks to make different looking patterns. Okay, I'll meet you at the dining table. All right, here's all the blocks, and I've laid it out best I could on my small table. Well, it's not a small table, it's a pretty massive table, but the quilts are even bigger. So the 5th block on each row is folded in half over here on the right-hand side, just so it doesn't fall off the table. And I don't even have the last row on here because there just wasn't enough room. But if we put all the blocks the same direction, you will see that it makes a double pattern. It makes a diagonal stripe with the white squares that are surrounded by the darker fabrics, and that stripe shows up real well. And then there's a diagonal stripe going the other direction of the dark fabrics. So this is option 1, and I don't have a clue which one I'm going to pick yet, but give me a minute and we'll have another option. All right, here's option 2. It starts with a square in the middle of the white white squares surrounded by dark fabric, and then the squares just keep getting bigger around it, kind of like a rippling effect. So this is option 2. And this is option 3. It kind of has a checkerboard effect. I'm really liking this one because of all the secondary and third patterns going through here. I like the way that looks a lot, but I've liked all of them so far. So let's try one more, even though there's a lot more than just 4. We'll try one more. And here's option 4. It's kind of a chevron pattern. I like it too, but I think I took a picture on my cell phone of all 4 of them because you can tell so much better by looking at a picture on your cell phone. But I think I am going to go with option 3. It had so many different patterns in it that I thought it made it more interesting. So comment below which one that you like the best. We don't all have to like the same one, so just give me your honest opinion. I'm going to switch this back to option 3 and then start sewing the rows together and show you glimpses of it along the way. Okay, here is finished quilt top. It is 5 blocks wide by 7 blocks long, and they're 12-inch square blocks once they're finished. It is currently 60.5 inches by 84.5 inches wide by length. I'm probably going to add a border to it. I just don't have anything in my stash that really matches it right now. So I'm going to have to go shopping. Oh darn. It takes 12 light fat quarters like the white and 12 dark fat quarters like the blue, or you could substitute 3 yards for each of those. I'd get a little more than 3 yards. I'd get about 3 1/4, because that 3 yards will be exactly what you need. And if you make any little cutting error, you'll run short. So I'd get at least 3 1/2 yards. I'm going to put a link to the free pattern that I used in the description box. And there's a link to my cutout diagram to cut it out of fat quarters. I hope you've enjoyed this and that you have learned something from it, and if so, would you please give it a like. If you're not a subscriber, I would appreciate having you subscribe. And I'm really pleased with the way this turned out, except I see 2 mistakes already. I see right here, this block is reversed, and right here. I will go in there and fix those when I add my border. I tell you, it doesn't pay to sew when you're tired. I've made a round trip flight to Houston on Tuesday and a round trip drive to San Angelo yesterday, and I'm just a little weary, so I apologize for all the mistakes that are in this video. And if you need me to redo part of this video, I mean maybe remake a block or something because something's left out, please note that in the comments and I can do that. I do have a vacation planned at the end of next week, so I'm not sure if I'll have time to get a video done before then for next weekend. It may be a couple weeks before I get another video out. So I thank you for your patience and bearing with me as I get these things done. If you would then, please like, subscribe, share, comment. Any of those things helps my channel and helps me be able to make more videos. I have some really fun quilts planned, and I'm thinking the next one I want to do, well, it's either going to be a chandelier quilt or courthouse stepped quilt. So check back regularly, and I will see you next time. Remember, whatever you do, do it to the glory of the Lord.